What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through the top waiver wire targets heading into week 11 of the NFL season. Some of these guys are maybe players that can help you make that playoff push. Others, maybe you're waiting for an injury or a breakout for them to become relevant, but could help you later on in the season. These are going to be players that are rostered in 40% or fewer leagues using the ESPN waiver wire. If you guys have any fantasy questions, drop them down below. I'll make sure to get back to everyone. But let's just dive right into it here. And we're going to start off with a couple of rookie wide receivers. And the first one is going to be rookie Pearsall. Now, in your more competitive leagues, he's probably already going to be rostered. But on ESPN, he's only rostered in 25% of leagues. Coming off the bye week, maybe he was dropped. It's possible. And we saw in his first game with Debo, Juwan Jennings back, CMC back, he still had a solid role. He had a 71% raw participation, was targeted 6 times, caught 4 of them for 73 yards and a touchdown. Now, he was the wide receiver 3 in terms of his routes and snaps, which isn't ideal, but like 71% raw participation, it's fine. What I think was important about Pearsall, and I guess just this 49ers offense in general, is that they had really consolidated targets. He was only one of 5 players to be targeted. So it was those 3 wide receivers, it was CMC, Kittle, that was it. So they focused their targets in on those 5, and it's only his 3rd game of the season. So with this type of usage, he already has a solid role. It's not crazy to think that he could continue to get better here and carve out, slightly more opportunities. Very young player, like I said, he's a rookie. I mean, just his 3rd game back from being shot. So this is very encouraging out of rookie Pearsall, and who knows, he could go on one of those like late season rookie tears. The other rookie I want to talk about here is Adonai Mitchell, who is rostered in 8.2% of leagues. And we saw that with Michael Pittman out, it's not like he saw a slight decrease in usage. He jumped all the way up to starting wide receiver usage. He had a 95% raw participation. He was targeted 6 times, caught all 6 of them for 71 yards. Now, even in a limited role, AD Mitchell had commanded targets at a really high level pretty much all season long. He had some just weird miscommunication issues with Richardson. He had some drops thrown in there. But coming into week 10, he had the 3rd highest target rate in the NFL. So when he was out there running a route, he was getting targeted on a very high percentage of those opportunities. You have Michael Pittman, who missed this game with a back injury. This was a situation where a few weeks ago, there were reports that he was going to go on IR. All of a sudden, he was playing the next week, but he missed here in week 10. He hasn't been productive in week 8 and week 9, so I don't think it's crazy for him to still potentially go on IR or just continue to miss time here. And if that's the case, if Pittman's out of the lineup, Adonai Mitchell's looking at a legit opportunity as a starting wide receiver. He's commanding targets at a high level, coming off a solid game. I definitely think he's interesting, and like I said, rostered in under 10% of leagues. Definitely someone who's a potential pickup and could be available even in your more competitive leagues. Now we're going to shift over to the running back position, and I guess maybe this is the one running back who could have some week-to-week value. It's going to be Audric Estime, who is rostered in 1.1% of leagues. It seems like over the last few weeks, there's been some rumblings of we're going to see more of Estime. He's going to get an increased workload. And it had not happened up until week 10, but he went out in week 10 and was the Broncos running back 1 in usage. He took 14 of the 17 running back carries. I mean, that is a substantial share of those carries. The problem is he only turned it into 53 yards. He had no targets, obviously no receptions, did not get into the end zone. And even on those 14 carries, the raw efficiency isn't great, but also looking at the more advanced metrics, he was 16 yards under expected. So there's no guarantee he holds on to this RB1 spot. It's not like he had an amazing game to really stamp that role. But if you can get someone who just led a backfield and carries on waivers at this point in the season, I think he is worth a speculative add. Maybe he could expand his workload in better matchups, could potentially be playable. So someone who is at least somewhat interesting to look at here. And then we're just going to run through a bunch of these handcuff backs. The first one here, Blake Corum, rostered in 15.9% of leagues. Obviously the Kyren Williams handcuff. Kyren goes down. Blake Corum could be stepping into a significant workload. This honestly has been a really rough year for handcuff backs, just because for whatever reason, the running back position has stayed very, very healthy. And the wide receiver position, which is typically the healthier position, that's where you've seen all these super serious long-term injuries, players going on IR. So these handcuff running backs really have not had the opportunity to take over. but that's not to say that it couldn't happen in these later weeks. And like, you could be picking up these random wide receivers who are never going to crack your lineup. Not the guys I'm mentioning in this video, but just like these random roster fillers who are like projected for 6-7 points. Or you could pick up a running back where they're one injury away from all of a sudden becoming like a top 20 option at the position. Those are the players that can really stamp your playoff push or, really help you out in the playoffs. So Blake Corum, interesting. Trey Benson is also interesting, rostered in 16% of leagues. Had a really nice game, actually, in Week 10. He's the James Conner handcuff. 10 carries for 62 yards, 2 targets, 2 receptions for 25 yards. Now, this game did kind of get out of hand, which could have led to a larger workload for Benson, but I do believe that when they pulled the starters, they also pulled Trey Benson. So he did have a little bit of a larger workload, early on in this game than he normally would, where it's typically just James Conner dominating the opportunities. The fact that he played well is encouraging, and like maybe he can work his way into a super desperate start, but more likely than not, he's just the James Conner handcuff. Then we have Braelon Allen, rostered in 21.9% of leagues. He is the Breece Hall handcuff. We have Ray Davis, rostered in 19% of leagues. He is the James Cook handcuff. And then one handcuff who kind of reemerged this week in Week 10, it's Gus Edwards, rostered in 20.6% of leagues. He is the J.K. Dobbins handcuff. And I actually thought his usage yesterday was pretty interesting because when he went down, J.K. Dobbins just completely dominated the touches. Like, you'd Kamani Vidal barely filtering in for like a few opportunities a game. And I think, myself included, a lot of people thought, okay, maybe J.K. Dobbins has just like completely taken over this backfield, even though there was a solid split early on, like he's earned that running back 1 spot. It seems like him just dominating the carries was more due to them maybe not trusting Vidal or not having another backup plan for Gus Edwards, because Gus Edwards came back, had 10 carries to J.K. Dobbins 15, and actually Edwards was pretty efficient with his opportunities, 10 carries for 55 yards. So it seems like he's going to have like some week-to-week involvement, but obviously the upside comes if J.K. Dobbins were to go down. Now, a wide receiver here, another young wide receiver, we have Demario Douglas, who is rostered in 26.4% of leagues. Now, is Douglas ever going to be a super strong like wide receiver 2 this season? Probably not, but I do think he can work his way into like desperate wide receiver 3, flex conversations. In 3 healthy games with Drake May, he has gone 6 for 92 and a touchdown, 7 for 35, and 4 for 50. So nothing crazy. He had the one nice game, not going to have a super, crazy high ceiling, but he's had 3 decent performances, especially in PPR games. So he's someone where you can plug and play with bye weeks, injuries, and, feel all right about it. And then the last guy in this video is going to be Taysom Hill. Do believe I talked about him last week. I just think for these tight ends that could be sitting on waivers, he's probably the most appealing option. Week 10, 4 carries for 14 yards, 2 receptions for 36 yards, didn't get into the end zone. Nothing crazy, but in PPR leagues, what's that, like 7-8 points? Like, you'll kind of take that if someone doesn't get into the end zone. We look back to Week 9, 4 receptions, 5 carries. He did get into the end zone. He just has like this unique combination of usage, has some touchdown upside. We actually saw the Saints offense look somewhat competent, which was encouraging. And I do just think he's going to be in this range of like 6 to 8 opportunities a game, with Chris Olave going on IR and then Rashid Shaheed out for the season. But that is going to wrap it up for the top waiver wire targets. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Any questions, drop them down below. Like I talked about with some of these handcuff running backs, at this point, you should be looking for players that can actually make a difference. If you're rostering guys that are just never going to play in your lineup, there's not really a ton of point. Like some of these handcuffs, they might not play right ever just due to a lack of injury, but at least they have the upside of turning into something. Same with these younger wide receivers. Like maybe Michael Pittman comes back and Adonai Mitchell doesn't have a solid role, but on the off chance or, the chance that Michael Pittman goes on IR, now you have an opportunity for a young rookie, talented round 2 pick to have that breakout opportunity. So just keep that in mind. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.